Today is June 14th, 2021. This is Mordecai, host of the updates, bringing you your daily Elden Ring update. There is a ton of news about Elden Ring today. We have two new screenshots, this one in some underground crystal area which will definitely be my new desktop background. And there's this one which showcases your horse's ability to jump good. But the main news is that Miyazaki did 4 big interviews talking about Elden Ring that were released today, and I'm going to describe the new things we've learned from them. Miyazaki provided a lot of information, so I'm going to divide it up to multiplayer, world, gameplay, and lore information. Let's begin! When asked about PvP, Miyazaki was excited, and he said invasions will be in the game, and there will also be optional PvP. They've tried to make this aspect of the game less annoying, which hopefully means it will be more seamless. There's also Covenant aspects of the multiplayer that add flavor to it, so maybe something like the Spear of the Church Covenant in Dark Souls 3 where you play as the boss. You will also have special HUD marker features that inform players in PvP, so it's not an endless hide-and-seek game in an open world. Co-op is also present in the game, and the threshold for getting help has been lowered. You will no longer have to be dependent on rare resources like embers and humanity to summon help. Miyazaki says that it's now more accessible. There are specific locations on the map where players can leave their signs to see who is currently available to summon. It could be by these pillars where we see the player characters summon help in the gameplay trailer. You can explore the open world together as well, though you will still leave the host world after helping them defeat the boss. But the biggest thing is that there will be no horse riding in multiplayer, so sadly no horse PvP fights and no jousting. There will also be asynchronous elements returning in multiplayer, such as dead bloodstains, messages, and phantom shadows of other players. And this time, you can use passwords to only see your group's messages and bloodstains on the ground. This is honestly a very exciting feature, and I will definitely make a password once the game is out that represents our community with its messages and deaths on the ground. As for the world, the Lands Between is made up of 6 large areas, and each one is a domain of one of the aforementioned demigods. You can tackle them in the specific order they're designed, or you can go in the order you want. You can't travel to each one from the start though, and the reason for this is that they didn't want players to get lost in the world that is so big. That is why there's some elements of guidance, especially at the beginning, that will help you get around. There's generally a lot of freedom in the world, and you can break off from paths, or you may get sent to areas against your will, like when you get sacked in Bloodborne and sent to Yahar Ghul. There is also a hub area, but you can't access it from the start of the game. In Elden Ring, there are 6 main dungeons called Legacy, 1 for each area. They are seamlessly connected to the Lands Between. Legacy is like the well-designed areas of the Dark Souls series. However, it is larger and has elements such as jumping that make it more fun to explore. Elden Ring does have a world map, but specific areas like dungeons and castles don't have a map once you're inside them. The world map won't be filled with question marks itself, but instead it lets the players themselves put markers on areas of potential interest. There's also catacombs, castles, fortresses, and many more areas you will find. As for the gameplay, there will be around 10 starting classes at the beginning of the game for you to choose from. There are now way more ways to tackle the combat. There's a dedicated jump button now, and you can use it to evade low attacks or jump attack an enemy. You can also counter after defending with your shields as well. Fall damage has been also lowered to reduce player stress, so if you fall from a cliff, there's a chance you may not die. Weapon arts from Dark Souls 3 are also back, but they're not restricted to just one weapon, and there's about 100 different techniques that you can apply to different weapons. You can combine your skills with different weapons and even learn magic along the way, so expect better build customization. There are abilities in the game such as art and magic that you can find, buy, or learn from NPCs, but you can't unlock them through skill trees like in Sekiro. Stamina bar also exists in Elden Ring, but apparently it will be less restrictive than the other games, allowing the player more freedom in combat. A new element in the game is stealth. You can lower your posture, hide in grass, and approach enemies without being discovered, just like in this screenshot by the caravan. Elden Ring is going to feature crafting and customization of items on the go, using materials found in the world. It's an experience of replenishing resources on the ground and flexibly creating items that are needed at the time, but health recovery is also special, just like in the past. Miyazaki states that there will also be additional health recovery items, just like life gems in Dark Souls 2 perhaps. Fast traveling is available in the game for long distances, but you're encouraged to use your horse as well, which is limited to open fields, but they are supposedly quite pleasant. There won't be any resurrections in Elden Ring upon death like there were in Sekiro, so once you die, you will have to respawn at the last checkpoint. There are no mimic chests in Elden Ring, but Miyazaki states that you will find similar surprises, so be on the lookout. A feature that Elden Ring has is changes to time and weather. For example, at night, the experience of close combat is different because the visibility of each other is reduced. There are also special traces where visibility is higher at night. Furthermore, some fearsome enemies only appear at nighttime. Miyazaki states that there are only a few mandatory bosses in the game that must be defeated for story progression, but the order in which you'll have to defeat them is completely up to the player. There's also a lot of optional bosses as well. Spirits are another way to help you fight in Elden Ring. Apparently you can collect them just like weapons, armor, and magic, and they will aid you in fights. You can improve the spirits' abilities and use them to attack as decoys or as shields to guard your back. Miyazaki says that some spirits are useless too, but you may get emotionally attached to them because they're cute. Speaking of spirits, you can now use the spirit of deceased enemies as allies in battles. I'm not quite sure how this is going to work, but it's another way to aid you in fights. Overall, Miyazaki estimates that the game takes around 30 hours to complete without doing any of the side quests, but he's not really certain of that estimation. Miyazaki cited Breath of the Wild as inspiration for the playful freedom of the open world. However, he reiterated that there are no lively towns or villages in the game, but there are still many NPCs left to discover. Miyazaki touches on the George R. R. Martin aspect and how the story in Elden Ring is heavily based on characters, so the narrative will be easier to understand for the players. George R. R. Martin helped them with the writing that they couldn't come up with themselves. It involves a sense of character and drama in the game. The story will be less abstract than their previous games, but the player will still be discovering things for themselves and the narrative won't be forced upon them. There's still going to be dialogues and cutscenes, which are particularly important as the story has multiple protagonists. Aside from the player character, several other people also play an important role in the story. So the name of the world is Lands Between, and as I speculated in the video the other day, that name was invented by George R. R. Martin himself. So the similarity to King's Landing's name probably wasn't a coincidence. Miyazaki hopes the Lands Between will invoke the feeling of something that's mysterious and very ethereal, and hopes the players experience it that way as well. Additionally, Miyazaki revealed that the Tarnished are those who were once blessed by the Earth Tree, a tree representing the Elden Ring. This blessing gave people golden eyes. However, some individuals lost this grace and golden eyes, becoming tarnished as a result. They were then exiled from the Lands Between. A long time after that, the Elden Ring was shattered, and this caused the Tarnished to have the desire to return to the Lands Between and gain back the grace they once had. And this is when we come in. A foul Tarnished who's trying to return to the land they were once banished from to become an Elden Lord. Miyazaki states that the bosses in the game are essentially demigods who were written by George R. R. Martin as well. Each demigod became mad once they gained a shard of the Elden Ring, which is what explains their monstrous and evil form. As for the endings of the game, Elden Ring will have multiple of them. You get an ending depending on your decisions in the game and interactions with different NPCs. And finally, and most importantly, Miyazaki believes they will successfully make the January 2022 release date. Let's hope there are no more delays. Anyway, that sums up all the new things we've learned from the interviews today. I'll have links to the articles in the description below if you would like to read them yourself. Huge shout out to the people who helped translate the Japanese and Russian articles. I was personally planning on doing a bit of a surprise for the anniversary of the daily updates today, but I think I'll leave that to tomorrow's update since this video is already long enough. Anyway, this has been your daily Elden Ring update for June 14th, 2021.